The millionaire was a man who seemed to own the world. His mansion stood on top of a hill, gleaming under the sun with marble floors that reflected every step he took and chandeliers that sparkled like stars. Everything about him shouted wealth, from the tailored suits he wore to the expensive watch that glinted on his wrist. But wealth, he believed, was not enough. What truly mattered to him was showing it off, reminding everyone around him that he was better, smarter, and more important than anyone else. From the moment he woke up each day, arrogance guided his actions. He rarely spoke without reminding others of his accomplishments, his business deals, and the luxury he enjoyed. He had a way of looking at people that made them feel small, as if their thoughts and opinions didn't matter. Even his employees felt the weight of his presence. They had long learned that attempting to impress him or gain his approval was nearly impossible, because he was never satisfied. A kind word or a smile from him was rare, like a precious gem. He loved to test people in ways that highlighted their weaknesses. He believed intelligence and cleverness were traits that belonged only to the rich or the educated elite, and he took every opportunity to prove that others could never match him. When he spoke, there was always a subtle mocking tone, a challenge wrapped inside his words. People around him often left conversations feeling humiliated or doubting their own abilities. He enjoyed it, secretly measuring their discomfort like a game, finding satisfaction in seeing them stumble under the weight of their inadequacy. One day, he decided to throw a challenge that he was certain no one could succeed in. It wasn't just a test of knowledge. It was a way to entertain himself while asserting his superiority. He gathered his staff in the grand hall, holding a small piece of paper in his hand. On it was a phrase written in a foreign language, complicated and obscure. He smirked as he looked around the room, making sure all eyes were on him. "Translate this," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "and my pay is yours." The staff exchanged nervous glances. Some whispered quietly to each other, unsure if anyone should even attempt the task. They knew the millionaire's reputation for cruelty when someone failed. But he didn't seem to notice their hesitation, only enjoying the way fear and doubt spread across their faces. He imagined the laughter he would have when no one could answer correctly, picturing himself as the clever, untouchable master of the house. In that moment, the millionaire's arrogance was on full display. He believed his wealth made him cleverer than anyone else, that his education and status gave him a unique superiority. He assumed that intelligence was a trait you could measure in money and that people of lower status, especially those who worked for him, could never reach the level of brilliance he claimed for himself. He had no idea that his assumptions were about to be challenged in a way he would never forget. Yet beyond the smirks and the show of confidence, there was a subtle fear he kept hidden, even if he didn't realize it. Deep down, he feared anyone proving him wrong, anyone showing that his arrogance was misplaced. But his pride was too strong to admit this. Instead, he chose to mask it with mockery, turning a simple challenge into a public display of superiority. He wanted the staff to see that failing was inevitable, that he alone had the knowledge and wit to succeed in life. As he watched the staff hesitate, he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms and smirking. The room seemed to shrink under his gaze. The chandeliers above, the polished marble floor, even the distant gardens outside, all reflected his sense of control and power. Yet in his certainty, he didn't notice the quiet observers among the staff, the ones who had been underestimated their whole lives. He didn't see the sharp eyes that were watching, the mind quietly analyzing the challenge, ready to respond in a way that would shake his confidence to its core. In that moment, the millionaire felt unstoppable. He had wealth, status, and the admiration or fear of everyone around him. His arrogance wrapped around him like a cloak, making him believe he was untouchable. But arrogance, he did not know, often blinds a person to the possibilities hidden in plain sight. And in his eagerness to showcase his superiority, he was setting the stage for an unforgettable lesson that would humble him in ways he could never anticipate. While the millionaire sat in his grand hall, basking in the glow of his own arrogance, there was someone else in the room who hardly drew attention, yet whose presence was quietly commanding. She was the Black Maid, a woman who had worked in the mansion for many years. Unlike the millionaire, she did not need grandeur or wealth to define her. Her strength lay in her quiet intelligence, her calm composure, and the sharpness of her mind, which often went unnoticed because she chose not to demand attention. She moved gracefully through the mansion, Her steps soft but purposeful, always aware of everything happening around her. The staff respected her not just for her skills in managing household duties, but also for her wisdom and discretion. She could read people better than anyone else in the house, understanding their intentions, moods, and weaknesses almost instinctively. Unlike the millionaire who relied on money to assert power, she relied on observation and insight. The maid had long grown accustomed to the millionaire's arrogance. She had watched him mock other employees, flaunt his wealth, and take pride in his own intelligence while underestimating everyone else. Many staff members dreaded his presence, feeling constantly on edge, but she had learned to navigate the tension with patience and calm. Where others felt fear or resentment, she felt focus and strategy. She knew that arrogance often masked insecurity, and she quietly noted every pattern, every mannerism, every hint of overconfidence on that particular day. As the millionaire held up the foreign phrase and issued his challenge, the maid stood in the background observing. She did not flinch, did not roll her eyes, and certainly did not voice any doubt aloud. Instead, she allowed herself a faint, knowing smile. She understood the weight of the challenge and the expectations placed on everyone in the room. She also understood that she had a unique advantage. No one expected her to succeed, and that invisibility was a powerful tool. The other staff members shifted nervously, whispering and avoiding eye contact with the millionaire. Some tried to rationalize why it was impossible, while others simply froze, paralyzed by the fear of humiliation. But the maid's mind was calm. Her thoughts moved quickly, analyzing the letters, the sounds, and the meaning behind the phrase. She had a natural talent for languages, cultivated quietly over the years through books she read in secret and conversations she listened to attentively. She had learned that intelligence often thrived in silence, away from the showy displays that the millionaire so adored. Even as the millionaire's voice grew louder, mocking and demanding, she remained composed. She had seen arrogance like this before. It always came with cracks, moments where overconfidence would betray itself. She waited patiently, knowing that when the time was right, she could act decisively. Others might have rushed, eager to please or afraid to fail, but her strategy was different. Observation, calculation, and quiet readiness. Her presence, though understated, was magnetic in a subtle way. While the millionaire drew attention through fear and spectacle, she drew it through calm confidence. Staff members often found themselves glancing at her, sensing that something extraordinary lay beneath her quiet demeanor. Even the millionaire, busy with his own ego, occasionally noticed the way she seemed untouched by his showmanship, but he dismissed it. After all, he thought, how could someone so low in status possibly outshine him? And yet, in her quiet presence, there was a promise. A hint that the rules of this game were about to change. She did not need to shout, argue, or demand recognition. She merely needed to wait for the moment when her skills, intelligence, and courage would speak louder than the millionaire's arrogance ever could. In that silent, unassuming way, the black maid became the true unseen force in the room, ready to turn the tables at the most unexpected moment. The air in the grand hall seemed to thicken as the millionaire held the small, folded piece of paper between his fingers. His eyes sparkled with a mixture of amusement and arrogance, and a sly smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention to him, making it clear that this was no ordinary moment. It was a spectacle, a test, and an opportunity for him to reinforce his own superiority. Listen carefully, he began, his voice echoing across the marble floors. I have a phrase here. It is not for everyone. Only someone truly clever, someone worthy of my attention could possibly translate it. He waved the paper slightly, as if its mere presence carried some magical weight. Translate this correctly and I will give you my pay. Fail, and well, you will simply prove what I already know, that intelligence is reserved for the privileged few. The staff exchanged uneasy glances. Murmurs rippled quietly through the room, some hesitant, some skeptical. The phrase itself was written in a language most of them had never seen, let alone understood. Its curves, symbols, and unfamiliar letters seemed to mock them silently. Some felt their stomachs tighten at the thought of attempting it, while others instinctively stepped back, fearing the millionaire's wrath if they were wrong. Yet, as the millionaire looked around the room, he seemed oblivious to the growing tension. In his mind, the outcome was already certain. He imagined the laughter, the pitying smiles he would wear, and the subtle shake of his head at their failures. To him, this was entertainment, a way to showcase not just his wealth but his unmatched intellect. He believed himself untouchable, convinced that no one, not even the most diligent or intelligent staff, could rise to meet his challenge. In contrast, the Black Maid stood quietly, almost unnoticed at the back. While everyone else hesitated, she observed. Her gaze shifted from the paper to the millionaire, noting his posture, the slight smirk that revealed his overconfidence, and the arrogance that clung to him like a second skin. She could feel the tension in the room, the nervous energy of the staff and the certainty of the millionaire, all mingling in one heavy atmosphere. But rather than feel intimidated, she felt a calm clarity. The millionaire, sensing hesitation, let out a low laugh, sharp and cutting. "Well," he demanded, raising his voice, "is there no one here brave enough or foolish enough to try? I would hate for this to go unresolved. Surely someone wants my pay." His words dripped with mockery, designed to shame anyone who even considered attempting the task. Some staff members shrank under his gaze, while others muttered excuses under their breath, their confidence shattered before it even had a chance to surface. The room grew quieter, the tension almost tangible. Every eye seemed to flicker nervously between the millionaire and the paper in his hand. Even the chandeliers above, brilliant as they were, seemed to cast a more dramatic shadow, accentuating the fear and hesitation among the staff. The challenge had become more than just a test. It was a moment of judgment, a demonstration of power, and a stage where the millionaire's arrogance could shine unchecked. And yet, amidst the nerves and whispers, the Black Maid remained still, watching and waiting. She did not flinch at his taunts, nor did she feel the pressure that seemed to paralyze the others. In her silence, there was strategy. She understood that timing, precision, and confidence were far more powerful than fear or haste. The challenge had been announced, the stakes set, and the stage was prepared. All that remained was for someone unexpected to step forward, someone whose mind had long been underestimated, and transform this tense moment into something unforgettable. Little did the millionaire know, while he reveled in his self-assured superiority, that the quietest person in the room, the Black Maid, was preparing to rewrite the rules of the game entirely. His arrogance had blinded him to the one person who might actually succeed, the one person whose intelligence and courage had been quietly growing under his very nose, waiting for the perfect moment to make him freeze in disbelief. As the millionaire stood proudly, holding the folded paper, a strange silence filled the grand hall. It wasn't the peaceful kind of silence, but a heavy, suffocating quiet that seemed to press down on everyone present. The staff shifted uncomfortably, unsure where to look or what to do. Every eye darted nervously from the millionaire to the paper, then to one another as if seeking reassurance or hoping someone else would act first. But no one did. Whispers began to rise, soft and hesitant at first. Who could possibly translate that? One servant murmured under their breath, "It's impossible." Another whispered, barely audible, their voice trembling. Some lowered their eyes, focusing on the marble floor or the intricate patterns on the walls, trying to avoid the millionaire's piercing gaze. They feared not just failure, but the ridicule that would follow. In his presence, a single mistake could feel like a public humiliation, a permanent mark on one's confidence. The millionaire, noticing the hesitation, leaned slightly forward, his smirk widening. "Is no one brave enough?" he called, his voice echoing through the hall. His words carried a mocking tone, as though he were daring them to fail so he could watch their embarrassment. He thrived on this, on the uncertainty, the nervous energy, and the quiet panic that seemed to ripple through his employees. To him, this was proof of his superiority. Everyone else was too weak, too timid, too incapable of rising to his challenge. The tension in the room grew almost unbearable. Some staff members fidgeted, adjusting their clothing or shifting from one foot to the other, trying to appear busy or distracted. Others tried to rationalize why no one should attempt the task, convincing themselves it was beyond human capability. Each moment of silence seemed longer than the last, stretching like a rope tied tightly around the room. Every heartbeat felt amplified in the quiet, each breath heavier than the one before. Fear had transformed the once lively staff into a group of statues, frozen under the weight of expectation. Yet amidst the unease and self-doubt, one pair of eyes remained calm and observant. The Black Maid watched intently, noticing not just the expressions of fear but the tiny signs of arrogance in the millionaire. how he tapped his fingers impatiently, the way his smirk flickered for a fraction of a second when he believed no one could rise to his challenge. She saw through the spectacle, understanding that his arrogance was fragile and dependent on others' submission. The atmosphere of doubt reached its peak when the millionaire's voice grew louder, sharper, demanding someone to act. Are you all fools? Or are you too afraid to claim what I am offering? His words struck like a whip, and some staff members flinched visibly, their confidence crumbling entirely. They had wanted to impress him, to prove themselves, but his arrogance had made them doubt everything they knew. The room seemed paralyzed, a collective hesitation suspended in time. And yet in that very pause, the stage was set for a quiet revolution. The tension, the fear, and the disbelief created the perfect moment for someone unexpected to act. While everyone else doubted their own abilities, the Black Maid's mind was racing. She analyzed the challenge silently, aware of every detail, every nuance, and every opportunity that the millionaire's arrogance had left exposed. Where others saw impossibility, she saw potential. Where others felt fear, she felt focus. The atmosphere of doubt, thick and oppressive for the majority, was for her a canvas on which she could paint a moment of triumph. Each hesitant glance, each nervous shuffle by the staff, only reinforced her understanding of the stakes. She knew that in a room dominated by fear and arrogance, courage would stand out even more, and she was ready. She was ready to step forward when no one else could, to turn the tide, and to confront the millionaire's pride with intelligence, composure, and an unexpected brilliance that he had never imagined. In that room, thick with fear and hesitation, the invisible thread of suspense stretched taut. Everyone awaited a miracle or a failure, but none suspected that the quietest, least likely figure would soon hold the power to shatter the millionaire's arrogance entirely. The room was tense, thick with hesitation and quiet murmurs when suddenly, all eyes shifted. The Black Maid, who had been quietly observing from the back, straightened her posture. Her movements were subtle, but in that moment, they carried an unmistakable purpose. Where everyone else had faltered under the weight of fear and doubt, she was calm, confident, and resolute. The air seemed to change slightly around her, charged with anticipation. It was as if the entire room instinctively sensed that something extraordinary was about to happen. The millionaire, still holding the paper, barely concealed his surprise. His eyes flicked toward her, narrowing slightly, a faint smirk forming at first but quickly faltering. "You?" he said, his voice a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "Do you really think you can translate this?" He chuckled lightly, certain that her attempt would end in embarrassment, like so many before. But his arrogance blinded him to one critical detail. She had not come forward out of bravado. She had come forward out of quiet confidence and preparation. The staff watched in stunned silence. Some gasped quietly, others exchanged incredulous glances, and a few whispered under their breath. No one had expected her to step forward. After years of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed, she was about to prove that intelligence and capability often reside in the most unexpected places. Her presence alone was a statement, a silent defiance of the assumptions and prejudices that had surrounded her for so long. She approached the millionaire slowly, deliberately, her eyes never leaving his. The paper in his hand seemed suddenly less important than the calm determination radiating from her. Each step she took echoed softly against the marble floor, a steady rhythm that contrasted sharply with the anxious shifting of the others. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when courage would meet arrogance head-on. When she finally reached the front, she did not hesitate. She extended her hand, politely requesting the paper, her voice quiet but firm. "May I see it?" she asked. The simplicity of her words carried a weight that the millionaire had not anticipated. For the first time, a crack appeared in his confident facade. He hesitated, momentarily thrown off by her composure. He had always assumed that anyone of her status would falter, be intimidated or back down. Yet here she was, unflinching, demanding only what was fair, the chance to prove herself. As he reluctantly handed over the paper, the silence in the room deepened. The other staff members watched with wide eyes, some holding their breath, unsure of what would happen next. The tension was almost tangible, pressing down on everyone in the grand hall. The millionaire, meanwhile, leaned back slightly, folding his arms. He believed he had the upper hand, After all, the phrase was difficult, obscure, and beyond the reach of ordinary minds. Surely, he thought, she would stumble just like everyone else. But the Black Maid was not ordinary. She held the paper carefully, her eyes scanning the letters, absorbing every curve, every symbol, every subtle nuance. Her mind worked quickly, connecting patterns and meanings with a clarity born of years of quiet observation, learning, and resilience. She did not rush. She did not falter. Confidence guided her, and in that confidence lay a silent power. For the first time, the millionaire's smirk faltered completely. The arrogance that had carried him through countless victories now seemed fragile, almost vulnerable. He realized too late that this quiet, seemingly unremarkable maid might not just succeed. She might surpass every expectation he had ever held. The hall was silent except for the soft shuffle of her fingers against the paper and the faint hum of anticipation. Everyone could feel it. The moment when the rules of the room, the expectations of the arrogant, and the quiet strength of the underestimated would collide. In stepping forward, the Black Maid had done more than accept a challenge. She had shifted the balance of power in the room. She had taken the first decisive step in proving that true intelligence and courage are often hidden beneath quiet composure and unassuming presence. And in that charged, expectant silence, everyone knew this was the turning point. The moment that would change everything in the millionaire's grand hall, and in the minds of those who had long underestimated her, had arrived. The Black Maid held the paper steadily in her hands, her eyes scanning the foreign symbols with a calm intensity that seemed to make time slow around her. The grand hall, once filled with anxious murmurs and shifting feet, now fell into a profound silence. Even the chandeliers above seemed to hang motionless, their crystals catching the light as if to witness the unfolding moment. The millionaire, who had moments ago exuded absolute confidence, leaned forward slightly in his chair, his smirk fading into a thin line of curiosity mixed with disbelief. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she studied the paper, tracing the curves and edges of each symbol with quiet precision. Her mind worked methodically, connecting patterns and meanings with the kind of clarity that comes only from years of observation and patience. This was not luck or guessing. It was skill, intelligence, and experience honed quietly, away from the millionaire's pomp and arrogance. She had studied languages, symbols, and sounds in her own way, through books, listening, and careful attention to those around her. Now all that knowledge and preparation converged in this single moment. Finally, she looked up, her gaze meeting the millionaire's. There was no hesitation in her eyes, only calm assurance. This phrase, she began, her voice steady and clear, means... She paused for effect, allowing the room to hold its collective breath. Then she delivered the translation flawlessly, each word precise, each nuance perfect. Her pronunciation, tone, and choice of words left no room for ambiguity. It was as if she had been born to perform this task, as if every quiet day of learning and observing had been leading to this exact moment. The room reacted almost instantly. The staff, who had been frozen in doubt and fear, now stared in awe. Some gasped softly, unable to believe the accuracy of her translation. Others whispered to each other, their previous assumptions about her intelligence shattered in an instant. Even the chandeliers with their sparkling brilliance seemed to reflect the astonishment that hung thick in the air. The millionaire, however, was frozen in a way that no one had ever seen him before. His confident posture, his smirk, his arrogance, all of it vanished in an instant. The words he had thought impossible for anyone to understand had been spoken clearly and correctly by someone he had long dismissed. His mind struggled to process the reality. The Black Maid, quiet, unassuming, and overlooked, had just accomplished what he believed no one could. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. His voice, once commanding and sharp, caught somewhere between disbelief and shock. For a brief, suspended moment, the hall existed only in this reversal of power. The air vibrated with astonishment. The staff, who had previously cowered, now felt a rush of respect and admiration for the maid's brilliance. The millionaire's authority, so carefully cultivated over years of arrogance, had been challenged not with confrontation or force, but with intelligence, composure, and quiet confidence. The Black Maid had flipped the script entirely, showing that true talent often exists in places no one expects to look. Her translation was more than correct. It carried a subtle wisdom, a clarity that made the millionaire's own arrogance seem shallow by comparison. It was not just a matter of words, it was a lesson. She had demonstrated that intelligence and capability are not determined by wealth or status, and that underestimating someone based on appearance or position is a dangerous mistake. Finally, she handed the paper back gently, her expression calm but triumphant. The hall remained silent, the tension now replaced with stunned admiration. Even the millionaire seemed small, diminished not by force or argument but by the undeniable truth revealed by her mind and courage. The Black Maid had not only completed the challenge, she had redefined the room, the hierarchy and the understanding of everyone present. In that moment, it was clear, the quietest person in the room, the one no one expected, had just rewritten the rules, and the millionaire, frozen and humbled, had to confront a reality he had never imagined. Arrogance and wealth were no match for intelligence, courage, and quiet determination. The grand hall seemed to hold its breath as the Black Maid finished her flawless translation. A stillness settled over the room, so heavy that it felt almost tangible. The staff, who had moments before been paralyzed by fear and doubt, now watched in awe, their eyes wide and mouths slightly open. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a quiet, underestimated figure accomplishing what no one else had dared to attempt. And then there was the millionaire. He sat frozen in his grand chair, the paper still clutched loosely in his hand. His usual smirk had vanished, replaced by an expression he had not worn in years. Shock. The words the maid had spoken echoed in his mind, each one chipping away at the arrogance he had carried like armor for so long. He opened his mouth to speak, intending perhaps to dismiss her accomplishment, to claim that the challenge had been trickier than it seemed, or to salvage his pride. But no words came. His mind raced in disbelief, unable to process what he had just witnessed. For the first time in his life, he felt small, almost invisible. All the wealth, all the grandeur, and all the superiority he had relied upon seemed meaningless, compared to the quiet brilliance of someone he had dismissed as inconsequential. He realized painfully that he had been blind. He had spent years assuming intelligence and talent could only exist in the people who looked like him, spoke like him, or occupied positions of power. And now that illusion had been shattered in an instant. The staff could hardly believe their eyes. Whispers rippled through the room as admiration for the maid spread like wildfire. Even those who had long resented the millionaire felt a strange sense of satisfaction, seeing him humbled not by confrontation, but by a display of wit and intelligence he had overlooked. Every gesture, every confident movement of his past seemed hollow, compared to the quiet authority she had just demonstrated. The millionaire tried to regain his composure, straightening in his chair, but it was futile. His usual confidence, the arrogance that had defined him for so long, had been replaced by something unfamiliar. Respect mixed with fear, admiration mixed with disbelief. He realized that this single moment had shifted the balance of power. No longer could he assume superiority simply because of wealth, status, or education. Intelligence and courage were forces he had underestimated, and they had just shown him how dangerous that mistake could be. For a few long moments he simply stared at the maid. There was no anger, no insult, no attempt to reclaim dominance, only stunned recognition. He understood finally that her achievement was not just about translating a phrase. It was about proving that anyone, regardless of social standing or perceived inferiority, could challenge arrogance with knowledge, skill, and quiet confidence. The millionaire, who had always measured the world in terms of money and control, was now confronted with a truth he could not ignore. Humility, respect, and recognition of true talent were far more powerful than any wealth he possessed. The Black Maid returned the paper to him with calm dignity, her expression serene yet triumphant. The room seemed to exhale collectively. In the silence that followed, the millionaire's eyes softened slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that he had been humbled. He had been taught a lesson he would never forget. Not through anger, punishment, or confrontation, but through quiet intelligence and courage, and so, the grand hall, once filled with tension and fear, transformed in that moment. Arrogance had been confronted, prejudice had been challenged, and respect, long withheld, had been earned. The millionaire's reaction, though subtle, marked a profound turning point. The realization that underestimating someone based on appearance or status was a mistake, and that true brilliance could emerge from the most unexpected places.